Ladies and gentlemen, John Key, leader of the National Party, Prime Minister of New Zealand since 2008. Everyone voted for him without knowing his track record, who he worked for, where his career originated and how he does business today. And by the end of the short video you will know enough to be able to make an informed decision when voting him in or not again. John worked for 10 years as a New Zealand investment banker since the mid-1980s, and when the stock market crashed he made a killing selling New Zealand dollars. He headed offshore in 1995 working for Merrill Lynch, the bank that was exposed as the world's first derivatives traders and went bust during the 2008 financial crisis due to its heavy investment in the derivatives market, swallowed up by the Bank of America, which it turns out John Key still has shares in. A conflict of interest considering anyone could Google the bank name and fines to see it's been fined many times for drug dealing, gun running, money laundering, and is famous for getting countries into debt. Is John Key personally profiting from New Zealand's growing indebtedness? The Bank of America also has a stake in the military-industrial complex, who've profited tremendously after several successive no-end-in-sight illegal US wars, and this gives you an idea of the kind of circles John revolves in. John's worked for Merrill Lynch in Singapore, London, Sydney and Ireland, and when the Irish economy was kicking off, it was allowing sweetheart tax breaks to big banks and financial institutions if they moved their back offices to Ireland. So John did, assisting 15,000 of his clients to avoid tax. The Irish economy was hollowed out with debt, collapsing shortly after John skipped the country and put all his money into blind trusts. John Key knows what's in his blind trusts. He's a bit of a drinker and let it slip while a bit pissed that he owns a vineyard. Turns out that vineyard is in his blind trust, although he claims he doesn't know what's in it. This is because he has two trusts, one blind and one not so blind, that mirrors the other one. He was in charge of business units like global foreign exchange and European bond and derivative trading. What is derivative trading? Basically, it's so complicated that the Auditor General once said something like, "It's such a technical area that I can't understand it, so I got KPMG to investigate themselves for me, and they assure me it's all good, bro." Do you recall the Great Depression? Of course not. In the 1920s, you could buy $10 of shares for only $1 down, allowing people to gamble on the stock market at incredible volumes. Massive amounts of fake money and debt was generated, and the economy got sucked into it like a black hole. To prevent that happening again, a law was crafted called the Glass-Steagall Act, which was repealed in 1999, leaving the US derivatives market completely unregulated. The New York State Gaming Commission tried to regulate it because they saw derivatives as gambling, but they were unsuccessful. Obviously. In 1999, John was legally allowed to sell derivatives in America due to the repeal of Glass-Steagall and was invited to represent Merrill Lynch and join the Foreign Exchange Committee of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a private banking cartel that has a monopoly on the supply of money and loan it to the US government at interest and more or less control the US government through debt. Ownership of the 13 banks with shares in the Fed can be traced back to the world's most ultra-intergenerational wealth families, hidden away from public view via an elaborate network of family trusts. John worked there for 2 years and twice undertook management studies at Harvard University in Boston. He became known as the Smiling Assassin by colleagues after personally terminating over 100 employees in one day with a big beaming smile, no guilt, no remorse, no conscience. A corporate psychopath. Known to be charming and enchanting when you first meet them, but are ultimately shallow and have few meaningful lasting relationships. They crave money and power and are willing to sabotage, intimidate, manipulate, steal, defame, lie and cheat, shamelessly without guilt. Desiring both attention and idolization, they have pathological narcissism and despise being criticized. They are also often sexually promiscuous. Private prosecutor Graham McCready is including a DVD of The Wolf of Wall Street in his evidence against John Key, evidence of the lifestyle and mentality Key and co-workers likely enjoyed on Wall Street. Normally on Wall Street your earnings get paid 40% cash, 40% stock, 20% options. Key demanded to be paid 100% in stock and options. That's where his incentive to crime is. Can you imagine the opportunities for insider trading when you literally run the country? He tried to flush out commercially sensitive information from the Ombudsman when Transrail New Zealand was being valued while at the same time owning shares in it. John Key cannot help himself. When Key left Wall Street after 6 or 7 years in foreign exchange, he was in the tip-top of the elite, with roughly $50 million on salary and bonuses. Key refers to his $5 million mansion as the house that Merrill built. They had a beach house in Omaha and now have a $3.2 million Hawaiian holiday home. Only 202,000 people have incomes above $30 million. Roughly 2,000 of those are billionaires. John says, we're not ridiculously wealthy. There are lots of people not seen on the NBR rich list that have a lot of money. Not counting his blind trusts, he could be worth hundreds of millions. Is he a Wall Street banker or New Zealand Prime Minister? Jumping forward to the 2008 financial crisis, Money magazine said derivatives were one of the chief causes of the 2008 credit crunch, a collapse that happened in the same year we elected John Key to handle the debt crisis he helped cause, as he admitted on breakfast television. And what did he do once elected in order to save us from the debt crisis? He borrowed more money than all previous prime ministers combined. We've gone from $8 billion to over $80 billion so far, with another $112 billion worth of derivative debts in off-the-book accounting that haven't been reported on since 2011, so they must be growing. Key knew about his unauthorised biography long before it was released, and guess what? It doesn't even mention the word derivatives once. A man of the people, you say? He's supposed to be the Member of Parliament for Helensville and lives across town in a $5 million Parnell mansion he calls the house that Merrill built. Only had one public meeting in his electorate the whole election, on the proviso that no one can talk about or criticise him, any other party, or their policy, or their candidates. And guess who was the only person that violated these conditions, which John Key himself set up for everybody else? John Key! John's done many terrible things and told so many lies that we could never cover them all because there are new ones every day. But here's a few right honourable mentions. Goods and services tax used to be 13.5%. He said he wouldn't raise it, and then he raised it. The Government Communications and Security Bureau, the GCSB. He said he wouldn't break the law and spy on Kiwis. He then spied on Kiwis illegally. Then he changed the law retroactively to make breaking the law legal and continues to spy on Kiwis to this day. The TPPA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, a secret trade treaty that both National and Labour are pushing. It will seize control of the economy and to a large extent the government's ability to write its own laws if they impede the will of international corporations who are writing the secret treaty. If we impede on their profits, we're taken to the World Court which the corporations control and have to pay fines in a case which the banks and corporations cannot lose. We already provide 3 Queen's Counsel lawyers for the World Bank-controlled World Court to go out and take money from poor countries that can't pay off their debt to the bankers already. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is of better use as TP when you need to PP at a PPTA meeting. New Zealand Defence under John Key. Operation Katapo, a training exercise to depose an anti-US leader. The largest amount of foreign troops in New Zealand since World War II, using protesters holding placards with anti-American slogans as mock terrorists. Will the US protect its financial interests in New Zealand by force if necessary? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. John signed a partnership agreement with NATO, the world's pseudo-private army, and the US Coast Guard. John Key wants them to return to New Zealand and have jurisdiction in our waters. Some harbours are being dredged to make them deeper, allegedly to allow for larger vessels. We're already able to accommodate the world's largest cruise liners. What's larger than the world's largest cruise liner? Aircraft carriers. It's also now been made illegal for New Zealand police to pull over foreign military vehicles on our roads. We are also a strategic nuclear submarine outlet. Submarines can fire missiles in the northern Pacific and then escape into underwater trenches and travel undetected all the way to New Zealand. Recently, a massive remodel of Ohakea Air Base, of a few fences and other high-tech upgrades costing millions, all allegedly because we're getting just 10 new helicopters. Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. The environmental policy of Greens, Labour, Internet Mana and National is all Agenda 21, but they call it sustainability, smart growth, smart meters and sustainable development. Signed by Prime Minister Jim Bolger in 1992 aboard Prince Charles' private yacht, This UN document is the global template for how to locally set up a total surveillance and control grid for all human activity for administrative convenience at a global level. Plans include microchipping livestock, classify most of the nation's landmass as protected areas that are off limits to human activity, establish super cities connected by mega highways for human resettlement, and predominantly cramped apartment blocks along railroad tracks. So, let me see if I have this straight. He's a psychopathic, narcissistic, passive-aggressive with daddy issues, and he has control of a country that has no corruption prevention framework. He may have been sent here to destroy this country, but it is not destroyed yet, and we can change our future if we choose to. If we sink Team Key, it will deal a crippling blow to the financial elite's agenda. You can search and verify any of these facts for yourself. The research for this video was provided by Evelyn Gilbert from Aotearoa Wider Perspective, Ben Vidgen, author of State Secrets, Penny Bright, Anti-Corruption Watchdog, and Ian Parker from Public Credit or Bust. This is Vinnie Eastwood. Vote wisely, New Zealand.